Young Justice the cartoon is adored by many as one of DC's best outings for animated television, having a group of young superheroes working together, relationships growing, and fights brewing. This show was even canceled and brought back, and people jumped right back into it years later. But what about the Young Justice comic books? Well, they're quite a different story. Alright, and as all my videos, I like to trickle back into the past, and we're going to start off with the Teen Titans, since they were a major hit in the 80s and people were just eating it up. But, like all good things, there's only so much you can do before it starts to become a bit stale. So mid-90s until late 90s, DC decided, let's burst things up. They didn't want the Teen Titans drifting off and never coming back since they had such a big following, so instead of getting rid of them, they wanted to keep the Titans forever in just Titans for young adults, and they were kind of just staying more of that family team dynamic relationship going on. But what about the kids?
I don't give a fuck!
And see, that's where DC decided the best approach was to create Young Justice to replace Teen Titans. Titans grew with its audience, but the key to success for most companies, especially entertainment, is to gain a new following with the younger generation. Hence, Young Justice was born to grab those kids and young teenagers. So Teen Titans could be goofy and lighthearted, but it also had the darker approach to more mature themed storylines. As teens got older, they leaned into that. Young Justice went a very different route, being that over-the-top comic goofiness and pushed it up to 11 a lot of the time, giving us some bizarre storylines, crazy fun art design, and just more lighthearted teenage banter. So they dropped all the members from the old Teen Titans team pretty much, and they gave you a new team. So they had Arrowette, they had Superboy, they had Wonder Girl, Impulse, and of course Robin, as well as other team members coming in and out of the group. They brought back members similar to the old Teen Titans, like Tim as the new Robin, or Impulse as the new Kid Flash basically, or Arrowette as the new Red Arrow, or Roy if you know him better. And we had to have characters that had the similar approach because you need to get new fans, but you also might want to entertain some of the older fans. Now what's funny about it is the TV show Young Justice has some similar ideas to the comic, even though they are vastly different. One of the biggest things though is Red Tornado is kind of the leader or watcher of the group in both forms of entertainment. So similar to how the show went, they do the idea pretty well. However, the start missions and the fights and all of that just feels very lighthearted and fun. Things like stopping bad guys in 20 minutes before something terrible happens every issue. Don't worry, they got this. They're the kids, they're the heroes, they're gonna be fine. And the Children of a Corn type spoof where kids go to India only to find out children are attacking adults. None of it is very serious, but it is a nice contrast from Titans at the time, which kept more of like the young dating, the drama, you know, the people loved in Teen Titans, just a little bit of an older audience, while Young Justice went more of that wacky fun late 90s adventures. And I, for one, actually thought this was actually a solid idea. However, the series actually started to grow on me more when it did touch on deeper issues or personal relationships. My favorite storyline in here was actually provided by Arrowette, and hopefully I'm saying that name right. I keep saying it, but that's what it looks like to me. And if I'm wrong, you know, slap me in the face virtually. But going to her guidance counselor for help in the beginning or early times of the series, only for her to get murdered, and then Arrowette goes on a, you know, revenge-seeking hunt. It's dark. It makes so much sense because, you know, heroes of any age can lose themselves in vengeance or revenge, and one so young, losing the person who's actually one of the only ones helping her as an adult can easily make you come to your breaking point. This story in particular works really well, and it has, you know, the gun message 20 years prior to everybody else talking about it right now. And I really do enjoy this storyline, maybe because it focuses on more of a mature theme storyline than most of the series, but for some reason it hooked me and I really just loved it. As the series progressed, it actually grew into something a bit special for me. This is 55 plus issues because you got a couple of crossovers here. So it felt like once we got past the first few issues, or I'd say the first maybe, I don't know, 12, when we were starting to get out of the 90s, it left those roots behind a little less zany, a little less goofy. I mean, it still had the high energy, wonky feel to it, even introducing someone like Little Lobo, a tiny version of that psychopathic maniac. It gave us team members coming in and out including my girl Cass, aka Batgirl. It led us into some relationships even, mostly towards the end of the series, but some notable love interests that actually go into the next Teen Titans in the 2003 series. So things like this just kind of helped evolve it into adding some drama to it, and, you know, maybe getting some of the older fan base that now has grew up with it in the span of the 4 to 5 years the series ran into the 2003 when it ended. But Young Justice isn't perfect. It was the answer for DC to split the age groups they were after, but Young Justice really never lives up to the heights of the 80s series or even the Jeff Johns Teen Titans of the 2003 that basically took a lot of this cast after, or at least the main cast, and put them into a bigger, darker, more mature situations that I think almost anyone could appreciate. And I think we have to address the artwork. So it is very 90s, or at least very late 90s. And it's actually not bad. I, in fact, enjoyed it. I think the over-the-top look of it works for most of the series. I mean, you kind of just have to ignore the fact that the female characters are half-naked teenagers. So that's a bit gross. But just how superhero comics were and still are at times. So just be ready for that. But if you can look past it, the artwork is wonky, zany, weird, but also somehow a little charming at points. And some stories out there are just timeless. You can read them now and enjoy them as much as you read them 30 years ago. That's just how things are. But Young Justice, you have to kind of go into the frame of mind that this was made during the late 90s, and then you'll really dig it. Because to enjoy it, you have to have some of that 90s feel in a comic book to enjoy it, especially if you're a kid from the 90s like myself. The coolness of being a 90s kid is just, it's not talked about enough. Fuck the 80s, 90s are better. No, I'm just kidding. But if you get into that mind frame that this is a 90s series, even though it does try to mature itself a little later, then I think you can enjoy it a little bit more. But in all seriousness, I do think Young Justice is interesting, and it's a fun series that should be checked out. I don't think it'll work for everyone, and I think that's okay. It remains like a little hidden gem, even with the flaws for me, and I think everybody who's willing to try something different, a little bit more goofy, and not expecting the TV show, which I think really took the name and went running with it, and now that's what people think of with Young Justice. But yeah, check this one out. It's something a little bit interesting that I feel like nobody really talks about, but I think it is, in its own weird little crazy 90s way, worth checking out. If you like my video, of course, please hit that like button. That always means a lot to me. If you love my video, hit the subscribe button. I have so many more videos coming out. And if you've read Young Justice, I would love to hear your opinion. I've heard a lot of opinions on Teen Titans, but Young Justice, there's very few people I've talked to who read it. So if you have, I would love to hear what you think. Do you think it's fabulous? Do you think it's the worst thing you ever read? Or do you think it's just okay? Put your comments below, and I hope you guys check this out and my new videos coming out. And everybody else, have a wonderful day.